Welcome back in here on the Believe in NFL Draft Prospects podcast. Today we're going to be going through various prop bets for the 2022 NFL Draft. Those props provided to us by Bet Online. Joe DeLeone here with Ryan Roberts. It's officially draft week. You're going to be hearing us on Monday for this conversation. Ryan, we finally made it. We've made it this far. And what better way to have some fun with getting ready for what's going to go down on Thursday by talking a little bit of betting.
Well, I mean, it's a lot of fun, man. I mean, me and you did pretty well last year on some prop bets, man. So I was funny. I was actually thinking about that today, actually talking to a buddy, and I want to set them probably tomorrow. I'm a little late this year, man, because the lines are already moving, obviously, that we know. But we have to link up. We have to talk a little money situations, you know.
Well, we've got plenty of opportunities for everybody out there to make some money, and if you want to go do any of these bets, there are more prop bets out there available to you than the ones that we're going to go through today, but we have a ton of them that we're going to end up reading through, debating on which side we are going to be standing, and make sure you head to Bet Online if you're going to be doing that betting. Speaking of which, today's partner, Bet Online, has these props. They also have props and bets for the entire NBA playoffs, the MLB, which is in full swing right now, and then hockey, any MMA fights that are going down. If you like to bet and you're looking for a new place to do your wagering, make sure you head to Bet Online. It's super easy to get started, so head to their website today or use your mobile device to join. Use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts. All right, Ryan, first one that I wanted to start with, let's start by breaking down offensive and defensive players, the total amount to go in the first round. Defensively, Bet Online has, for the first round, 15.5 defensive prospects. Mm-hmm. So kicking it to you first, over, under, where do you sit on that?
So I did a mock draft last week or the week before. I can't remember when it came out. I looked at it before this show. I had 17 defensive players going in the first round. So it was pretty split. It's so difficult, man. It's so difficult because there's always those guys that you're just like not 100% sure going to be first round picks. You know, I'm gonna go over though. I'm gonna ultimately go over. I think that we're going to get a run on edge, obviously, right? Like we've talked about a ton. I think we're going to see at least 4 corners. I think go in the first round. I think there's going to be a few safeties as well. I think that the question's going to be is how many linebackers in the first round. If it's over 1. I think it definitely hits this over 15.5. So I'll go over, and I'll say 17 defensive players is my official pick, but all I have to hit is 16, obviously.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat here with you on this one. And just from the simple premise that we've been talking about through the entirety of this draft process is that this is a defensive heavy class. And there's that possibility maybe some of the offensive guys get pushed up a little bit. They end up getting drafted a little bit earlier than they should because there is a lack of depth at various positions. There's a possibility that the quarterback group gets thrust into the first round and we have a weird run of more than 3 guys, which we've got a prop for that we're going to get to. But I think 15.5 just sounds so low with all the potential edge guys. Like off the top of my head, like there's a possibility we have like 7, 8 edge players that go in the first round and then 4 to 5 corners. That's already putting us at 13. Like that's already putting us possibly in a really, really close situation to that 15.5.
Yeah, for only 2 positions, like you just said.
Right.
We're going to talk safety over under at some point, but I think that there's going to be more safeties taken in the first round than people kind of kind of think right now. So I guess I'm kind of letting the cat out of the bag when we get to the safety over under a little bit. But yeah, I kind of I think we're on similar wavelengths here. I mean, there's that edge position is just one where there's just so many guys, man. Because like people keep talking obviously about Aiden Hutchinson. They talk about the top guys, right? They talk about Aiden Hutchinson. They'll talk about Trayvon Walker out of Georgia. They'll talk about Kayvon Thibodeau. But there's other guys that are going to be selected in that first round. I mean, we got a couple down the list. Again, not to spoil too much, but we have like Arnold Ebiketti that might sneak in. Boye Mafe. There's a lot of guys I think that could crash the first round conversation. So yeah, I think over for the defense. I would say so. Yeah.
Talking offensive prospects, Ryan, it has the amount for offensive players going in the first round at 16.5. That one for me is way too high. That just sounds way too high for offensive players. You think about the possibility that we have 6 offensive linemen total, with the 4 that have been projected in the first round, plus maybe a couple of these interior guys, 4 to 5 receivers. We're basically banking on it being quarterbacks that fills the remaining bit there, because we're not going to get a tight end in the first round. We're not going to get a running back in the first round. I just think that 16.5 number is way too high for this draft class.
I mean, it's why we did this back to back, right? Like, it's process of elimination. If I'm telling you that I think it's going to be 17 defensive players, and after that says that there's only going to be 15 offensive players. So I agree with you. I think that the quarterback conversation is going to be the interesting one, and we got you covered for that later in the show. But is there going to be a running back in the first round? Probably not. Maybe, but like most likely not. Is there going to be a tight end? No, there probably is not. The question is going to be how many offensive linemen and how many quarterbacks. That's going to be the real sticking point to this conversation. But naturally, based upon the fact that I already took the over for the defense, I'm taking the under for the offense.
You hit on the offensive line, and that rounds into our specific position group guys first. Over under set at 7 for the first round by Bet Online right now. I'm leaning under on that one because, like, of what I just said. We're talking about Evan Neal, Ike Mekwonu, Charles Cross. Sounds like they're guaranteed to go pretty early in the first round. Then we have that potential for Trevor Penning to be a first-round selection.
Yep.
You've got that possibility that maybe Bernard Raymond, Tyler Smith, some of these other guys sneak their way at the end of the first round. But into the equation there now, Kenyon Green, Tyler Linderbaum. I don't know who else slots in there. Are we just banking on that there's reaches at tackle to get that 7 number?
I hate the even numbers too on these over-unders, man. It's such cowardice stuff. All due respect to Bet Online, but all right. Well, let's do it real quick. I mean, you mentioned the guys real quick, so I'm going to go through the numbers in my head real quick because I have a short attention span. So you mentioned Evan Neal, Ike Mekwonu, locks. Charles Cross, lock. Trevor Penning's probably going in the first round. That's 4. Tyler Linderbaum, I think, is probably going in the first round, even though I don't think he's a lock like people act like he is. But I'll say he's 5. Kenyon Green, I think, is a lock. I mean, that's 6 right there, right? I mean, you mentioned Zion Johnson might be 7. Oh man, I might go push here, Joe. I might go push because I honestly do not think that we're going to see a second center, obviously, but I don't think that we're going to see Bernard Raymond in the first round. I know people keep talking about it. I'm just not buying it. I went back to the film just to see if there's something I'm missing. I don't think I'm missing anything, man. Like, I really don't. So I'm going to say 7, and I'm going to say a push on this one. So if people out there are willing or wanting to bet this one, I would say stay clear of it, personally. That's just me, though.
Ryan, our next offensive prop bet, and here comes the tricky one here. Here's the one that I know that you're going to absolutely love to discuss. Total number of quarterbacks to be selected in round 1 is slotted at 3.5. I'm leaning towards the under, but what scares the crap out of me for the quarterbacks is, do we end up in a situation where one guy gets taken way too early and then there's just a run on them because everyone freaks out?
I'm going over. Yeah, I think you're, yes.
Really? You're going over?
Yes, I'm going over. Look, I mean, Malik Willis is going in the first round. Kenny Pickett is going in the first round. Desmond Ritter's going in the first round. I know we keep talking about that one, but like, I am like 98% sure that that's going to happen. So that's 3 right there. You only need one more. Matt Corral is kind of the wild card here. Does Matt Corral go in the first round? Very possible. Does Sam Howell go in the first round? I think that's also semi-possible. Not as likely as Matt Corral. So I'm saying there's 5 guys that are possible in this draft. All I need is 4. I'm going to say that 4 in a quarterback needy league where we've seen teams countless times, year after year, panic for quarterbacks. I'm saying it's over. Yes.
I'm kind of banking on the draft situation that the defensive players are appropriately evaluated and valued where they're supposed to go, and that there's maybe one quarterback at the tail end of the top 10. And let's say it's Malik Willis. Let's say somebody trades in to go get Malik Willis. I think if that happens, there's still a good chunk of teams after the Steelers that are in the teens that could draft Kenny Pickett. the wild card or what would put it at 3 is what you're saying, and it sounds like Desmond Ridder is likely going to be selected somewhere in the first round. So for me, what is going to make this the under is that a team trades back in, or one of these teams with an established quarterback room drafts Desmond Ridder, thinking that he's their developmental project for the future, who just ends up being their backup. But that's, to me, I think I agree that your situation is highly realistic. But the reason why I'm leaning towards the under is assuming and hoping that we don't have Desmond Ridder going in the top 20. If that happens, then I think all bets are off.
Well, I think we'll know very quickly in the top 10 picks. We'll know very quickly. If Carolina takes a quarterback, and let's say the Seattle Seahawks take a quarterback, and we have two guys definite in the top 10, then I think it's very high possibility it happens. Because we're not even talking about Atlanta too much, right? Like Atlanta at 8 could be another quarterback needy team if Detroit trades back from pick number 2. So I just think that teams are just going to panic, man. Like I just always defer to that because
I absolutely hate that.
Because I agree with you, but like we're in a universe now where Malik Willis is probably getting drafted before Kyle Hamilton. Like it's ass backwards, but like it is the world we live in right now. Like it's a quarterback driven league. It's just how it works.
But see, that's the thing is for me though, is that like we think that for sure if Ridder goes in the first round, he's going to be a top 20 pick. I know that we don't think he deserves to go in the top 20, but do we think that it's realistically possible that he's a top 20 pick?
I'd say more than likely that he's in the 20s, maybe not top 20. I mean, Steelers at 20, though, if Malik Willis and Kenny Pickett are both off the board and they're sitting there at 20, I think it's possible.
They would take Ridder?
He fits their prototype. Ooh. Yeah. I think so. I mean, yeah, with what they valued specifically. I mean, like they like the big athletic types. I mean, everyone just thinks about Big Ben, but like think about the players that they've gotten around them, right? Like, I mean, around him just as in backup roles and hopefully being the next guy. Like they just got Mitch Trubisky. He kind of fits that profile. Josh Dobbs was a guy that they kicked the tires on for a little bit. Dwayne Haskins was a guy, even though he's not the best athlete, like he's a bigger guy that they've had there. So yeah, I think that Pittsburgh's a very possible quarterback needy team. And I mean, they just, unless they're very sold that like Mitchell Trubisky might have a renaissance, I guess, but no, yeah, I think it's 3 for sure. That's why it's a tough over-under. I mean, I just keep going back, though, man. I think Matt Corral's like the guy that everyone's not talking about, but like he hasn't hurt himself this draft process, you know? Right. Like he might be the guy that sneaks in there. And I would not, again, put this out in the universe. I'm going to keep saying it. I would not be shocked if someone in the late trades back to the late 30s, or not the late 30s, to the early 30s and drafts Sam Howell. I would not be shocked. So I think there's going to be a run on quarterbacks. And I mean, Joe, there was once a draft where EJ Manuel was the 15th overall pick. There was once a draft where Christian Ponder was the 12th pick. There was once a draft where Jake Locker was the 8th pick. It happens every year, man. Every single year.
Hopefully that doesn't happen this year. I'm praying that there's like a little bit of awareness. But
you're optimistic.
Not.
You're an optimist.
I'm way too optimistic.
Yeah.
Last offensive prop that we have is for the receivers. Over under set at 6. I'm leaning the under on this one too, because if we think about the track of guys, probably not going to get anybody to go until around 10, like maybe a little bit earlier than 10. Say it goes Drake London in no particular order: Drake London, Garrett Wilson, Treylon Burks, Jameson Williams. That gets us to 4. That means in the remaining 20 picks. Mm-hmm. With all of those guys available, we would need to get Chris Olave, Jahan Dotson, George Pickens, any of those guys to fall in line after them. I just feel like if it was 5, I think I'd take the over, but the 6 to me is just a little too high.
Yeah, man. Again, I hate these even picks, man. Like I hate them. I don't think I would touch this one either, but I would also go under, I think, because like you said, Drake London, Jameson Williams, Garrett Wilson, like those 3 guys I think are pretty locked in. After that, I'm not sold that Treylon Burks is going to go in the first round. I would draft him in the first round, but I'm just not sold based on everything that I'm hearing. I'm also not sold that Chris Olave is definitely going to be a first round pick. I think that he has a chance to, and then George Pickens is the kind of the wild card out of Georgia. So I think if anything, again, it's a push. We're looking right at 6. But if I had to pick over or under for this one, I would go under just because I think there's more uncertainty after the top 3 than maybe people are talking about.
Talking on some of the defensive position groups, the line for corners to go in round 1 is set at 4.5. This one I like the over for us to get to 5, because assuming Sauce Gardner, Derek Stingley, Andrew Booth, keep hearing a lot of good things about Trent McDuffie. Seems like there's a lot of buzz for him to go in the first round.
Right.
That last remaining piece for it to go over is if it's Kaiir Elam. I mean, heck, there was at one point some hype for Roger McCreary to go in the first round. I don't know if that's going to happen anymore, but I feel like getting to 5 isn't going to be too difficult with the talent that we have at the corner position and the possibility we could have 2 guys go in the top 10.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the list right now. I would say also over here. And I would say this one's a little more unsettling than a couple of these that we're going to talk about, because there's some positions that we're going to talk about where like there's a couple more extra guys that I'm like, man, that's a possibility. I think that there's 6 at most that can go in the first round. Sauce Gardner's a certainty out of Cincinnati. Kaiir Elam, I think, out of Florida is going to sneak into the back half of the first round. Andrew Booth Jr., I think, is going to sneak into the first round out of Clemson. Trent McDuffie, like you said, Joe, NFL loves Trent McDuffie. And there's some teams that are going to be a little bit scared of that arm length, but the kick and play corner, man. And he's coming from a system, Jimmy Lake. I mean, obviously he's out as the head coach at Washington, but as good a developer of cornerback as basically anybody in the country. So I think that's 4 right there. Derek Stingley in absolutes. I think that he may go top 10. So I'm out of LSU. So that's 5 right there. And then Kyler Gordon, I think, is the last guy that has a possibility out of Washington. So I will say over, but it's one that you have to think about, I think, a little bit hard on this one.
This one shouldn't take too much thinking. Total amount of safeties to go in round 1 is set at 1.5. So we already get Kyle Hamilton done there. Lock. Guaranteed to have it in the first round. But then we've got Daxton Hill. We've got Jaquan Brisker. We've got Lewis Seen. Like, there's all those guys have been talked about as first round picks. I wouldn't be shocked if we have like 3, 4 guys that go in the end of the first round. So 1.5, man. I don't think the odds were great. I don't think it was like a huge payout, but I mean, heck, I would take that if you're trying to get a little bit of change.
I think I'm so glad that you feel the same way on that one, Joe, because this was the one where I looked at and I'm like, that's one that I'm placing a bet on. Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Like over. Kyle Hamilton, although everyone keeps knocking him down the boards, is going to go top 11 to 12. Like it's a certainty, right? So that's 1. You only need 1 more. And I think Lewis Seen, obviously, what he did at the combine, everybody's going to look at him and he's going to pencil him in. If not, it's going to be Daxton Hill. I mean, yes. I think that I think at least 3 go in the first round. So smash that 1.5. Smash the over on that one. That one's the easiest one, I think, on our list. I really think that's the easiest one.
Right. Yeah, that one 100% is the one that, like, if you're going to bet on the NFL draft, I would be betting on that one specifically, because again, 1.5 is just so low with all the talent that there is. There's a lot, and I understand that we've got really good players at, like, the corner position and edge, and there's going to be a lot of priorities on those guys. But I mean, heck, 1.5 is just so freaking low without taking into consideration, the possibilities for some of these other guys. Ryan, I want to, before we transition to the remaining ones, I want to just hit on with one of our first conference player ones, and total amount of SEC players drafted. It is set at 10.5.
Okay.
Am I crazy in saying that every year you should just always take the over?
I don't think you're crazy. I mean, I'm just kind of going through it in my head. 10.5. So there's 2 corners of Derek Stingley, Kaiir Elam. Lewis Seen's a possibility out of Georgia, obviously, right? We have Trayvon Walker is a certainty. The 2 defensive tackles from Georgia are more than likely.
Charles Cross,
Evan Neal. How many are we at right there? Kenyon Green, possibly. Yeah. Jamison Williams at wide receiver.
Traylon Burks, possibly. George Pickens, possibly.
Yeah. How many are we at? I mean, that's got to be more than
that's way over 10.
It's
silly to even say that 10 is like a low number, but that was a bad voice crack. But 10.5,
very bad voice crack.
Yeah, I have to cut that out. But 10.5, yes, certainly that one. I think that one's pretty low.
Yeah, I mean, it's always like it's. I mean, let me just say this on the consulting side of like the business. Every agent wants to represent SEC players. You know why? Because they go early. that's just the certainty
Even if they're
in life,
bad,
man.
even
Like,
if they're bad, they're still going to
yeah.
get drafted early.
If you're a defensive lineman or offensive lineman that has starting experience coming out of the SEC, you're probably going to get drafted, and you're probably going to get drafted pretty high, depending on the quality of play, obviously. But yes, I would say that one I would almost always bet the over unless it was an absurd type of number. 10.5 seems relatively mild to me, so yeah, I would take the over on that one. I think.
All right, Ryan. The next conference amount of players selected one that I thought was really interesting was Big Ten players drafted at 6.5. This one I'm also going to probably go with the over here. So let's map it out here for our listeners. Aiden Hutchinson, clear cut, gonna go in the top there. Tyler Linderbaum is somebody who comes into the equation. Jahan Dotson, somebody that we can bring into the conversation. Garrett Wilson is likely going to be a first round pick.
Chris Olave, maybe. Yeah.
Chris Olave, maybe. Who am I already missing?
I mean, I would have said David Ajabo was a certainty out of Michigan. I mean, I still wouldn't discount it because he's got the talent. George Karloftis is another one, defensive end. Maybe a Arnold Ebiketti out of Penn State. Maybe a Boye Mafe out of Minnesota. Maybe a Jaquan Brisker out of Penn State at the safety position. I mean, how many is that? Are we there?
Hill. Yeah, we're over 6.5.
Hill. Yeah.
You might need a little bit of help to get that one, but I think 6.5 is still pretty low.
I think that one's a pretty easy one, actually. Like, now that I'm looking at it, like, yeah, I think there's 5 that are like slam dunk, and then you just need to just get 2 left, right? So yeah. No, that's another one that I feel 6.5 seems low. That seems like a low.
I know.
Seems like a low number.
The last one that's super low before we talk about these player draft position over unders, ACC is only set at 4.5.
4.5.
So for that one to happen, we all we need is Kenny Pickett, Andrew Booth, Jermaine Johnson,
which all is possible. Yeah,
which is all possible. And I'm trying to think of two more guys that we could get
that are
from
likely
the ACC
or that are long shots. Because
Ika Mekwanu, that's a guarantee. So that puts us at 4. So we just need one more player. Who else? Who are we missing here?
Man. I mean, I guess that's why the over-under is 4.5, right? Because we're stuck at 4 for a second.
Does Kyle Hamilton doesn't count?
No, he does not count. Don't you ever disrespect the University of Notre Dame like that again. Dude, it might be 4. That might be the number. I mean, Sam Howell, if you want to try to push it.
Wait. Here, okay, wait. I found the last person that we were missing. The reason why I thought that it made more sense than it did.
Yeah.
Zion Johnson.
Oh, Zion. Okay.
I think Zion Johnson's going to probably push that over the edge.
I probably would not touch that one still, though, because I feel like I don't know. Maybe. I don't know.
All right, let's talk about some of these specific players, though. I decided to do a couple deep pulls on a couple of these guys. The first one being Arnold Ebiketti over under 32.5. I feel like Ebiketti was not really brought into first round discussions for the longest time. And then you kind of just hear these like murmurs that maybe he goes in the end of the first round.
Right.
I don't see it. I don't feel like it's entirely that likely for him to go at that 32.5. It basically means, is he a first round pick? What is your evaluation there?
I like Arnold Ebiketti. I put on Twitter a couple months ago that I think he's what people tried to make Quincy Roche last year out of Miami. That was a Temple transfer. I like Ebiketti a ton. He's got 34-inch arms. I think he's a little more explosive and bendy than people give him credit for, and I think he's got a pretty good toolbox as far as a rusher. But I would take the over here because he's a little undersized. He's only 6'2" and a half, somewhere in that ballpark, and he's not like an insane tester. He's a good tester. And the production has just been kind of modest, right? Like he had some good production this past year at Penn State to a degree, but it hasn't been to the highest level. So I think that someone's going to get a ready-made pass rusher on day one, somewhere in the early second round conversation. But I'm taking the over on Arnold Ebiketti. I don't think that this is the profile that typically goes in the first round. I'm just not buying it.
Another guy that kind of fits that similar description. It's another Big Ten player that has been kind of thrown into the first round conversation at the end of the first round, could be a surprise pick at the end of the first round. Boy Mafe has been mocked in those lines, and his over under is set by Bet Online at 30.5.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the same line of thinking as with Ebiketti?
No, not near. I mean, they're way different players. I mean, first and foremost, Maffei's a little bit of a bigger body type, and he's just a better athlete overall. But he's not nearly a finished product. Ebiketti's got better hands. He's got better pass rush plan. Everything is just more nuanced than a guy like Boy Maffei. He's a little raw. But I'm going under here, Joe. I am. Because I think that.
You think that he could go before 30?
Before 31, he would have to go right. So like 30 or lower. Yes. Yeah, I do, because I think, he ran 4.57 at 260 pounds, and he's a really good athlete. And so I think that this is the type of edge that goes earlier than people think, because he's got the traits. People are always going to bank at traits on that position. So yeah, I think that Green Bay could be a team. I think they're like 29 or 30. That makes a lot of sense. I think there's a few teams. I mean, when you start getting to 20s there, you're going to start gambling at traits at edge, because edge is such a just important position. And I think that now, especially with David Ajabo being down with the torn Achilles, he's going to potentially slide out of the first round. There's going to have to be somebody else that's going to slide up. It's just naturally going to happen. So I think that it could be Boy Mafe. I think I think there's a decent chance that happens, just because of the traits that he has as an athlete.
I hate the next one, how likely it is. Desmond Ridder over under 29.5. Now the odds are for him to go under, to be like a mid-round first-round pick, is only minus 115. Him to go over is only minus 125. So you're probably not getting a big payout either way. It's not really a great bet, but I think just from like the NFL draft discussion sphere, like, is this a guy that if he gets drafted in the first round, he's getting drafted higher than 29th?
What do you think I'm going to say? Predict it.
Yes.
The answer is yes. The answer is yes, Joe.
My head hurts, Ryan. My head hurts.
I understand, man. But like, I think Pittsburgh, if Malik Willis and Kenny Pickett are not on the board at 20, I think that's the guy. I think that's their guy. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I think Desmond Ridder is going to go higher than people think. Like, I just do. I mean, because the NFL is stupid. Like, that's me. The NFL is misguided in decision making at times.
That's a really bold statement to just come out and say.
Yeah, I know. They're misguided with quarterback evaluation sometimes, man. He's a 4-year starter. He's 6'3 plus. He ran 4.5 something at the combine. He's got a good arm. Like, everything just kind of checks the boxes. So like, a team is going to look at him and say, like, oh, that's a clean prospect. He's got a high floor, even though I don't actually agree with that. But I think that, yes, I think Desmond Ridder is going to go in the 20s somewhere below, hit the under on 29.5. I think so.
I hate that I'm going to agree with you on that. I sadly can't disagree with you, because there is some truth to the matter that a lot of people agree that Desmond Ridder is just not a good enough quarterback to really earn that first round grade, but he's going to get drafted there because some team is going to think, maybe he works out. Maybe we can turn him into something. But he's just probably not going to, because his ceiling is just far lower than what you want from a developmental guy like that. Desmond
Ridder is a late day 2 quarterback, but he checks his boxes, and it's a bad quarterback class, so he's going to go early. He's going to go in the first round. Like, it's just, I honestly am at the point now where I would be surprised if Desmond Ridder doesn't go in the first round. Like, I would be shocked almost. like it's to that point. I mean, again, teams love their criteria for picking the quarterback position, and he hits all those boxes. As dumb as it is to say, because you watch his game and you're just seeing him airmail 5-yard outs, and you're like, he's not very good. Yeah. But the NFL makes those mistakes all the time. So,
Ryan, these next 3 that I have in front of me, I really like these ones. Like, I brought these ones up that they're less of a discussion point and more because the line is set up for a high likelihood that it works out and that we end up hitting these bets. Derek Stingley, and I actually placed a bet on one of these. So first one, Derek Stingley, LSU corner, over under 9.5. Under 9.5, I feel like that one's pretty. That's not a reach to say, right?
You bet without me, man. You placed.
I have a bet online account. I've been betting on the NBA playoffs and losing money left and right. I hit a couple parlays though. I got really excited. Yeah, I told Sean this. I put $25 in. I ran through all of my money, and then I had 2 parlays, and both those parlays hit. So I went from $0.38 to $55 in my account. So then I've just been rampantly betting.
You put that on Twitter, didn't you? I feel like I saw that story on Twitter.
I posted the screenshot of the conversation that Sean and I had.
Yeah. I knew I saw that somewhere.
Yes. Derek Stingley, though.
It's a tough one for me, Joe. It's a tough one, man. Like, I could see the Seahawks taking him at 9. I could even see Atlanta taking him at 8, but then I could also see him going at 12 to Minnesota or 11 to Washington. Like, I could see it, man. This is one of those in the category. There's a lot of bets on here that I really do like potentially to make. This is one I probably would not touch. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to go over. I think people are they're going to get scared of the injury, the durability concerns. I think they're going to, even though he's an explosive football player in a vacuum, top 10 talent easily in this class when healthy, but the best ability is availability. So I'm going to say that you go over here just barely. Like, he's going to go 11 or 12 out of this 10.5, but I just think that some teams are going to be a little scared of him, just a little bit.
All right. Well, I like this one a little bit better. I think there's a higher likelihood of this one coming to fruition. This is the one that I actually bet on. Just trying to pull up the odds. So Kyle Hamilton was listed at over under 11.5. And I took the under on this one. I know that it's not a guarantee. The under at 11.5 actually is decent odds. It's plus 100. So I didn't put a lot of money on it. So you get your money back with whatever you put in. That's pretty good. Pretty good odds for Kyle Hamilton. It seems like for some reason there's this possibility that he slides out. And to me, that him not going in the top 10, it feels like a smokescreen. It feels like somebody's trying to bait people into not overvaluing him. But Kyle Hamilton's really good.
I think the floor is 11 to Washington, so I'm going under here. I'm going under. I truly do believe that the floor is 10, but I've talked to some other people that obviously have great intel and great connections to the NFL who say that they think it's 11 is the floor. So whether the floor is 10 or 11, I think Kyle Hamilton is going under here. Like, does he get to 12 in Minnesota, man? Does potentially the best player in the draft get to 12? I just can't buy that. Because
if you look at the whole, let's look at from pick 3 all the way till 10. Texans could use a safety. If they're not overthinking it, they're going to draft him there. You go to 4, the Jets, maybe not really a fit. That one might not make a ton of sense. Might be a little bit harder to sell ourselves.
Well, I mean, they could still use the position. They can
still use it.
Yeah.
I feel like every time I've talked to a Jets pundit, though, they hate Kyle Hamilton for some whatever reason.
Well, it's because Jamal Adams scarred them. Life, they scarred him for life.
That's true.
Even though they're completely different players, but that's a different conversation for a different day.
Number 5 and also pick 7 for the Giants. Both of those are in play for Kyle Hamilton if he's available. Number 6, I think that one's probably the least likely because they already have Jeremy Chin. I think 2 similar style safeties.
Right.
Doesn't really make a lot of sense. 8, Atlanta is where like we start getting into spicy territory. We're like, okay, why the hell would he slide any further?
And he's from Georgia. And he's from Georgia.
Right. 9 iffy for the Seahawks because they do stupid stuff.
They might like him though, man. Like
that's why I think it's possible because they like to do stupid stuff.
They were one of the teams that were at the Notre Dame Pro Day. I'm just putting that out in the universe. Like they were pretty well represented at the Notre Dame Pro Day. So
right. So it sounds pretty likely because Washington also could add another defensive player. The last one that I wanted to hit on that I like to wrap us up here, George Karloftis at 20.5 over under for his draft position. If you take the under, you get it at plus 115. That's pretty good. Him to go under 20.5, because if there's that early run on edge rushers, there's some teams in there in the teens that need edge rushers. The Eagles, the Vikings, like that's a pretty good likelihood that happens.
Yeah, I would think I would go under because again, I think David Ojabo getting injured is going to push some edges up the board. So I think 20.5 is reasonable for where people kind of projected Karloftis for the longest time. But I think that you nailed one team, Joe. I think the Philadelphia Eagles are the team. They have picks 15 and 18. I think it makes a lot of sense. They are desperate for edge rushers. I mean, they have Hassan Reddick, who he's a kind of versatile edge linebacker type, right? Like he's not a true hand in the dirt defensive end. They brought back Derek Barnett on a 2-year deal, who's not very good. Brandon Graham's coming back from a torn Achilles at the age of 34. Josh Sweat is promising, but like very inconsistent. So I think Carloftus is going to go under 20.5, but it's not one that I feel great about just because I think that's, for whatever reason, man, some people just underrate George Carloftus. I don't agree with it, but I think it's the world we live in, but I would take the under in this situation.
Well, that's going to be it for our prop bets, folks. If you want to make a bet, make sure you go to Bet Online and tap into all their fantastic prop bets. There's many more than the ones that we discussed on today's show.